Yeah, they actually use it. They have an antique shop in there. But that building came from the back corner of the Frederick Wack wing. There's actually photographs of it, and it was probably the carriage shed. And because the Nadlers owned all this property, at some time they removed it and they put it on that site.
So the Nadlers bought the property from Harmony then? I mean,
well, they were paid workers at one time, so they actually worked for the Harmony Society, and it was during the transition, you know, late 1870s. I mean, you know, she was here. I actually talked to her in the Great House Garden when she was signing books. So, you know, she was still alive through all that transition. And, but it, you know, it's an interesting artifact and kind of shows the adaptive reuse of the buildings. And then you see the two pillars there in front of that porch. Those pillars are from the 1888 second school. They stood right at the front of the stairs. And I mean, we have time. If you don't mind, we'll walk up and look at them because they're kind of neat. All these alleys originally weren't here in the original town plan. And then, you know, when Ambridge developed, they cut these all in. I don't know if these people even here. These got these all. This is Henrici and Lentz, H&L,
okay.
And then the stars, and somewhere here, 1884.
And that was in front of the school, huh?
That was, yeah, they stood right in front of the school. And, you know, and the bad thing about them, see, they paint them.
Yeah.
And keeps the moisture in. But just as an interesting note, sandstone weighs 200 pounds per cubic foot. So those things are 4 foot tall and about a foot square. So they're probably 1,000 to 1,200 pounds with whatever is below them.
Wow.
So that's kind of the, you know, some of the hidden aspects.
So those would have been sold back here whenever?
Well, again, that was Christiana Knoedler's house in French.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right.
So, you know, in 1915 or thereabout, John Duss and Susie Duss, they subdivided all the property in this historic district, or the property of the Economy Society, and sold off lots. So, in the 1920s, you could buy a Harmonious house, and it would be full of what was in there, because as the population began to drop, you know, and once the society was dissolved, they just started selling property. So, you know, there's lots of stories out there of people that got, you know, there used to be used furniture dealers is what they called them then, and they would, you know, somebody would buy the house, they'd come in, they'd buy the contents, and they'd just distribute it. So you could find Harmonious furniture anywhere around here. I mean, there's still things turned up in basements and attics, so it's interesting. So this is 12th Street. And so if you look here, our #1 building is that second building down there. And these were used for dormitories for paid workers. Okay. So you know, that what was there. And actually on that corner there is where the woolen mill was. So
the far corner here.
Yeah, this corner right here.
On the other side.
And it burnt in the 1830s. So how landscape changes, lots become open, and then people begin
So
to,
it wasn't obviously a brick building then?
No, it was frame.
Then
yeah.
they rebuilt it there.
Yeah. And then all the support buildings, you know, on this other map. On this map, see there's, this would be 14th, 13th, that would be 12th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be 12th Street, and that, you know, there is where they were saying was the woolen mill. And then here are the dormitory buildings. But you can see all these little blocks are original buildings that were here. And pretty much the actual housing stopped. You know, that's the furthest house on, this is south orientation, north-south. And then the cemetery, you can see the white fence there. And then the orchard was there. There was actually an Indian mound there that, you know, they had park benches around and treated it, you know.
So it was an American Indian? I mean, a prehistoric Indian?
American Indian, yeah, probably a burial mound.
It was a couple blocks past the cemetery.
Yeah, just down on that end in the orchard. And then you have to remember too that where 65 is, the 4-lane, you know, that was called Highview Avenue. And they actually had some cannons down there. It was just a beautiful place to walk. And then where our cobblestone is, you know, that road actually went down to the river. So things have changed quite a bit. And I don't remember the exact number, but you know, the majority of houses were framed, wood frame, not brick. I can't remember the number right offhand, but I don't think there's more than 20 brick houses.
Oh, okay.
And compared to frame houses. So all these houses are in their original location, and you can see the windows and the layouts are all similar. Again, they all have that center beam construction. And these two little houses, these single-story houses, were harmless structures also, and they were probably built in the 1850s. And I think that there were more of them because only 2 of them left, but to give you a good example of how things happen, this building, I believe, still has original siding underneath it. But, you know, they've put aluminum siding in it. They've taken all the trim away so that you don't have the maintenance. So, you know, it's got 3 and 3 window fenestration. So
the historic district doesn't, I mean, they allow them to do that? Or
well,
is that...
it's been inactive. So, like I said, we tore a building down because they didn't have meetings. They just didn't have anything. This historic district has been around since 1960. Now, this is a single-story frame permanent structure. So it's just a good example of how.
Yeah, obviously, with the brick, that's not...
No.
Not 1800
Yeah, no.
brick.
It changes the total loss, but by the same token, you know, they're publicly owned. You don't have control. This is the building that they say is the original siding, but when we get back down around 15th Street, I'll show you a building in the early original siding. It gets much smaller at the peak. They used the big pieces where they could, and then on the peak they just used smaller pieces so they're not as wide. And the other thing, the original siding, most always has what they call a bead here. It's done with a plane. And the idea of it was the water would go into that bead, it would roll off. Is it there? I don't think. So I can show you that down below also. These windows, that's an 1850 window. That's not an 1830. And the reason I say that is the lights are much bigger. You know, there's only 2 there. And then the normal earlier windows, there would be 6 probably. And windows are all pegged together. They had no window weights, and they actually had a manufactured metal plunger that you pushed in. But you see in a lot of the old pictures, the Harmony Society used like a notch stick. And they had, 2 or 3 different levels for the window, and you just put it underneath there.
Did they paint their houses?
Yeah. And
Probably all
a
white.
number of years ago, we had a paint study. It's always a major conjecture, and everybody that looks at it, comes up with different analysis, but they were like a cream color for the most part, or red. So, that's the color. And this building is part of the structure, believe it or not.
Both parts?
No, this brick part isn't, but the front
But the
part
front,
is.
okay.
Yeah, and then that building,
Yeah, that
that
one.
building there is original building. But this would be pretty much and they mark here, that this is the site of the barns. And if you look here, here's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Those 3 barns. And 29 is a stationary threshing machine, so they'd bring the wheat, to the threshing machine. And some of the other outbuildings, cow stables and things like this. I actually think that one of these large buildings were actually moved. I'll show you when we get down there to the Ohio Valley lumber site, and they only tore it down about 10 years ago. And they tried to find somebody that would be interested in taking it, and couldn't find any takers.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing
Hello.
this morning?
Not good. How's everybody else? Good?
We're good. How are
Nice
you?
day, huh?
It is. The good thing about things is, the borough has, put traditional street lighting. This is the end of the historic district. It goes from 16th Street to 12th Street. So, the brick sidewalks, this was all a community development project. And traditional street lights, and they were actually made for us. We used these lights on Church Street where we were walking from I think it goes from 15th to 13th. But they're actually, the poles are cast out of poles in the collection, and the head of the fixture, which is all copper, was made to the dimensions of the original one. Now since then, they've been used here. They've been used in the borough of Beaver, their streetscape. They use the same poles and fixtures. Merrick Art Gallery used these poles and fixtures. We were supposed to get a patent on it, but unfortunately, or at least something from the manufacturer, but that didn't happen. So that's the story on that. But again, this is the sidewalk that we should have had in historic district. The sidewalk is according to the requirement, as is the ramp.
So what's, this Merrick Art Gallery doesn't have any association with this. I mean, it just happens to be that they chose to do it.
Yeah, but they did, because
It's been there for years and years.
Well, it's wonderful. I have a
That's what
friend.
I've heard.
I had a friend of mine is a curator, and I've known her since she was a baby, literally. But all the paintings have been cleaned. So as you get there's an elevator in there now. You can get access to the second floor. They joined the buildings together and built a wonderful drink center with a kitchen. They've done wonders.
But nothing, it has nothing to do with,
Well, everything that it
Harmony
has to do, in the 1860s, they were making nails for abortion. And so,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So they were here during the Harmony period. And we're at 13th. Oh, this is actually Wagner. Yeah, 13th Street. They say that it is the best streetscape, for streets, undisturbed houses still in their original location.
This is
That's
a
what-
Harmonist house.
I would say that you are right, sir.
I found that one by accident.
Let's just look at something. We're talking which school. You know, the best way to tell, and I didn't bring that map with me, is the National Register, because they got in every building and, verified it. The only reason that, of course, so many things have changed, it's got the right common bond, and the lintels could have been replaced, but they usually use brick lintels. But that's the best way to check, because the National
See the side?
Register, yeah, it's got the corbels.
See, look over here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing, the structural change with the windows and everything, but you're right, it still has the corbels. This whole complex, at one time there was a physician, and he was very interested in the Harmony Society. He owned like 18 buildings in the historic district. His name was Dr. Griffith, and he operated a store up in this. It's a Harmonist building, and then there's additions onto it coming this way. But the store had all German things, smokers, music boxes. He had an ice cream parlor in there, and he bought a whole city's worth of decorative cast iron street lamps, and he was going to give them to the borough to install them so that the historic district would be properly lit, and they disallowed it, so he put 3 in front of his store here, and that was the extent of it, and that kind of turned him off, and he ended up getting hepatitis and dying, and his wife and son sold the property off. No. And again, from an architectural standpoint, this is like a slate material. It's pretty thick, but it's still subject to damage. This is where the little store was. They had a player piano, Nickelodeon.
anything there now?
I don't believe
Yeah,
so.
sure,
There's
it
been
looked like it.
there's been restaurants in there. There's a bar in there. Now this is supposedly haunted. Something that we don't like to talk about at the site.
So this building over here,
This is the original Harmonist building. Yeah.
it's haunted, huh?
Yeah.
Who's supposed to be haunting it?
There was
The name of one of the descendants who were here?
no. Let me think about it a little bit, and it'll come back to me. The S hooks up there, they're all hand cast, and from a
Yeah,
blacksmith shop. Same with the nut, the threads are cut with a hand die. And what that does that summer beam that I told you that goes through there, that has a lag screw on the other end of it, and then they just put that nut piece on there to keep the beam from moving.
They don't ever retighten or anything.
I don't know of any, and you know, sometimes you even see them in the corner. A lot of people think it isn't appropriate, but it is, you know, because there is a beam in the corner, you know, the same way. So I think what happens, this is all on sand, these foundations, and they generally don't sag that much, only when they get moisture in there. So when they get moisture, that sand goes down, and then the whole foundation goes with it. So that's the purpose of it. So this is, go across here. Now there was a 19th century building here where that parking lot was, but it was not Harmony, where they did allow ground. But this is the streetscape that we're talking about.
Oh, okay. So these are all harmonious buildings.
They're all Harmonious buildings, every one of them. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there's 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So you can get a good idea from this. And you can see the window placement, you know, that window has been taken out and changed to a door. And like Sarah said, almost, well, all of the building originally when they were built has what they call that dental molding. And that's where the brick is stepped out. And all the roofs originally actually had a additional piece added to the end, like the last 3 feet. And what it did was it curved out. And its purpose was to slow the water from down off the wooden shingle, slow it so it would come out to the end, and that it would drip down. And all these buildings, see those bricks come out. That's called a drip. So, and then generally there would be brick laid in the dirt to catch that water. So, you know, they had a method of keeping the water out of the basement. Just an interesting light. Let's see if you can see it here. Yeah. See, these additions were put on in the 1950s, and you know, some people think it's because they were getting older, couldn't get to the second floor, so it added more bedroom space. But the interesting thing in that house right there, a friend of mine owned it and remodeled it into a duplex. And in that back room, there was a dividing wall that went all 32 feet. And it was all what they call tongue and groove board. And they put a 2x4 tapered on the floor, and it was notched out, and they put the same thing in the ceiling. They just slid these boards into it, and that's how they built the partition. So I got 32 feet of 5/4 thick, hand-planed, 12 to 14-inch wide boards, and that was the dividing wall. So the Harmony Society, you know, again, an interesting construction technique.
So you think they did, I mean...
Oh, yeah, it's
you're
definitely
sure it was
done.
finished?
Yeah, it's definitely done
Wow.
by the Harmony Society craftsmen. So, and, you know, in the 50s, it was heading towards the paid worker time, but not exactly.
Yeah.
But, so that's...
So did you have a descent? I mean, are
I
you a
did
descent?
not,
Oh,
no.
So you just have an interest in it.
in 1984, thereabouts, we joined. Just, you know, we were a young family. I had one daughter, and we liked history. But when we joined, we got a monthly newsletter, and the newsletter, they had a Victorian occasion, and for like a month, they they had pictures in there of how the Victorians dressed and different things that they're going to do. And we went with our only daughter at the time, and we did dress, and they had Strawberry Social, Ray Shepard, a director, 2 directors ago. He actually made homemade ice cream and strawberries. They had box lunches. And we had such a good time in 1984 that we have been continuing to be members and volunteers here all that time. So it just kind of grows, you know. We're not going to walk down here, but you know, you can see there's a number of dormitory buildings here, which, see that one on the left there? Then there's one next to it. If you come over here, you can see this log house?
Yeah.
That, there was originally a Harmon's house there, but that Dr. Griffith actually bought that house from out on Big Silicky Creek, and he moved it here, and it's been a real estate agency, it's been a lot of things, and one of our board members, Steve Roberts, just purchased it. It was up for tax sale. So it's a really nice piece of property, but the building is not original to here.
And it's not a
has no association with the Harmony Society. So, sure I'm not missing anything. And these, you know, these buildings have all taken the place of original structure. See what was here in Merlin. Again, this secretion was added, you know, as the town developed. So it wasn't originally part of the town plan on the Harmony Society. Now the next corner, we're going to come. This is where the hotel was. And they had a couple of hotels here. This was an all-frame building with a mansard roof, and it had an L on it that went the other way. It was actually torn down, I think, in 1901. So that's, you know, that's when we lost that building. And then across the way was the original Harmony structure. I don't believe it's the one that's there. No, I know it's not the one there. But it was oriented in a similar manner. See right here, and it was the stables for the hotel.
Okay.
And they had a number of dignitaries that stood here, and we've got some wonderful photographs in the 1880s and 90s.
So I have a photograph in front of, it would have probably been that hotel. I mean, I don't think it could have been earlier than that. Elizabeth Ott ran one of these hotels for a time, didn't she? Or this hotel?
It would more likely be this one.
I mean, she died about, I don't know, 1900 or somewhere close to that. But
Yeah. I actually have a piece of furniture
do you?
from Elizabeth Ott. And
She
married-
raised, my grandfather was an orphan and she raised him.
oh, really?
Yeah. He lived with her for, I mean, we were trying to figure out how many years, I don't know. Because I don't know when he came here.
Yeah.
Because he was from New Jersey. I mean, so I have no idea why he would have gotten here unless they were family friends back in Germany. I mean, his parents and Elizabeth Ott.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's the first Elizabeth Ott or a daughter, but Elizabeth Ott married May, M-A-Y,
Yep.
who was the teller of the Economy Savings and Loan.
Okay.
And she moved to Patterson Township, so her house is still standing.
Is that Ernestine?
Yeah.
Ernestine Ott May?
And they had an auction there in, do my numbers here, 1971. And it's called Patterson Heights.
Yeah.
And a lot of original Harmonious artifacts were sold at that auction, but at that time there just was no interest. And I served an apprenticeship for 4 years, and I went to college for 2. So I had not taken a vacation for 4 years because, you know, the work time accumulated to your total time to finish out your apprenticeship. And the week that we went on vacation was the week of the May auction.
Oh.
But I mean, there was original bottle of Harmonious wine labeled, unopened, that sold at that auction. There were chairs, cupboards, you know, it was quite an event. This building over here on the corner is an interesting building because when John Duss's mother came here, his father was killed at the Battle of Gettysburg. That's where they lived. And now I was telling you about the summer beans. They've actually removed all the partitions out of the inside of that building. You know, so it's open. Used to be a club, and they actually serve meals in there. I think now catering bought it. So, and
How you doing?
good.
Hello.
14th Street. That red building there, that is part of the silk industry here. And there were other buildings that they went up from there, right, Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah, they went up from there. And then this is the original Harmonious structure there. That is the original Harmonious building.
Okay.
And one of our former board members tried an adaptive reuse of that structure and put a significant investment in it. And it was a coffee house is what it was, but she rented rooms. So I went to a number of governmental meetings and things up there, but it never caught on, and now it's, you know, like a shop of this and that kind of things.
This is where Lover's Lane was too.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, this was an orchard. There's lots of photographs of Lover's Lane.
I mean, in our family history, they talk about hiding a lantern under, you know, the grandmother, one of my ancestors' skirts, you know, so that she wouldn't be seen, so that she
Yeah.
could
Meet some.
yeah, somebody.
Playing deaf
I'm
sign.
assuming he's meeting what would be my great grandfather, but who knows?
Now, you know, this was the main street, so to speak, into the village. So the hotel was located here. This is where the brick structure that I told you about was tore down like 20 years ago. That yellow building is the original Harmonious structure. The next one is not. And then the two houses across from each other, they were some of the first houses built here. They're frame, and the one on the right was Frederick Rapp's residence, and the one on the left was George Rapp's residence.
Okay, so
Now,
that's
it's kind of interesting because in some of Arndt's books, he translates letters from different things, and there's actually letters written where they bought siding and shipped it down river for the siding on those buildings. And underneath that insule brick, at least on the house on the right, Frederick's, the original beaded siding, bless you,
Excuse me, thank you.
is still on that building. Now, what they did was they actually took siding is supposed to be lapped.
I don't know if she wants to turn.
This is
here.
This is
one way.
one way.
Oh, it's one way. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so they're going to come to us. They took all the siding off and re-nailed it flush so they could put that beaded board on. But there's two extensions that's built on either end of that building. I owned that building at one time. A friend of mine who is a descendant, his name is Earl Ottenreith, somebody was going to buy it and tear it down. We actually bought the building so it would not be tore down.
Okay.
Paid taxes on it for 7 years. We did a lot of planning, but we never, there's 21 rooms and 5,100 square feet of floor space in that building.
And that amount of room would have been, I mean, that's original for the amount of room, or?
No, they actually, in 1850, they put an addition onto that in the back. It was originally, I think, just 8 rooms, 4 up, 4 down.
Wow.
But there's a lot of interesting architectural features, that are in there. And a lady that's purchased it, I think, is going to do something with it, but I'm not sure. So, and then the doctor's office is a single-story building as you look down there. So, 15th Street is this building, building 15. So that is Christoph Mueller, and it's just 2 rooms, single-story. And then this building was the original store, and at one time we owned that building also, and it's got a full basement in it with a sandstone floor, and it's got an access from the outside to take down, and the floor joists are on 1-foot centers to carry the weight of what they would put on the store. So it later became a residence when they had the store constructed. They tried to keep everything, located right in the center of town. And then the other buildings on the other side, were just residents. But when they did the historical survey, they got into a lot of these attics, and in the plaster on the inside of the brick, many of these buildings are dated between 1824 and 1828. So you can kind of see the progression, from the center. That's the way that they built out. So this is an important street, and in a plan that was done in 1966, this would have been the focus of the historic district, and hopefully someday still will be. There's another one of the estimates that we talked about. Now there was a frame building where you see the big fence right there.
Yeah.
There was a frame building in the regular streetscape located right on the other side of that brick. And again, the story, I was actually chairman of the Historic Architecture Review Board. The fellow that owned the High Valley Lumber, his name was Jim Shell. He had been a board member for longer than I had. And we tried to talk with him and have him become sympathetic to having an adaptive reuse of the building, for his plans. Right? He said he was going to build a new building. Well, he never did. And unfortunately, we got the wood saved, so they saved all the wood that they could. And we had a donor that owned this warehousing place up there, and he gave us space, and we put all the wood on a trailer truck. But he rented the space, so we put it outside, and in the end, the wood actually literally dripped off of the trailer. So we really never got any use of it. But the interesting thing about that is, to me, in the basement of that building, there was like 3 pieces of Harmony's furniture that were still in the basement. And, like the pickers of today, they used to be door knockers. And somebody actually bought a 4-drawer cherry inlaid chest that was in the basement. So now we don't have a Harmony's building, we have a parking lot. This edition is not of the Harmony's era. They did a nice job. At one time, this was a bank also. And they just recently tore this building down, and see how they took off the dental molding on the corner of that building?
Were the buildings connected? Why would they?
Well,
It was an addition.
Yeah, they took it off so they could build an addition onto it. And then all this would have been open, and then the border of the historic district in the 1960s, they called it the Marginal Railroad. There actually was a railroad right away that went on an angle right behind all this property and then went through Ohio Valley Lumber. And Ohio Valley Lumber was where I was telling you that one of the barns were actually disassembled and then rebuilt. And it was still there 15 years ago. Now again, this is another one of the added alleys, but that is a 12, 24. That is like a 30 by 40 addition onto the Frederick Rapp building. It's all posted being constructed, and you go up in that attic, you can see where the roof stops. It's like 12 feet high to the center beam. And it's got floors in it, and then there's a central hall on the second floor and the first floor, and then rooms off of that center hall. And there's a huge full basement downstairs. And so that was the 1850 addition to the Frederick Rapp. And oral tradition is that it was used as a vagrant's hotel. In other words, if you couldn't pay your way and stay at the regular hotel, that was used that way. And you know, that building even now was is still laid out. They actually rented it to the people that worked in American Bridge. So you only had one room, and then in the hallway there was a cast iron wash bowl, you know, on a pedestal. And I don't believe there was any, you know, inside plumbing as far as toilets and things. I think you had to come outside for that. But it's still laid out that way. Like I said, there's 21 rooms in
So
that
you
structure.
call it Frederick Rapp House, but what about in...
Well, because it was built in 1825 for Frederick Rapp while they were building the Great House. And the other side was built for George Rapp while they were doing the Great House. And there's documents and letters that talk about the wooden Frederick Rapp House and George Rapp House having wonderful Philadelphia wallpaper. So, you know, it was... Because that's where they entertained all the business people and the elite. So you wouldn't have seen this. Now, if you see that straggly gray building right on the other side of the white garage, nicely painted, that is the only still standing garden shed in the whole historic district.
A garden
And
shed.
yeah, when we were to make
years
this
old,
loop
yeah.
around, you know, we're going to stop and you can actually see the peak of it. And if you go inside, see the framing, it's harmonious period framing. That's exactly what it is. So, and that's actually on to the back of the doctor's building. There's been some additions to carry it through, and you know, he was known to have medicinal garden, so to speak. He was a, he was a horticulturist.
Yeah,
So,
okay, yeah. We have all the herb things and
oh yeah,
all
yeah.
that.
So coming up this way, there's two nice harness buildings. And then again, on the upper side of that was the sawmill was the first one that we looked at the picnic table. And then there was a planing mill on this right side, and they were all steam powered. So I was just talking to a friend of mine that lives in Ohio, in a town called Zor. And Zor...
I'm not very far from Zor.
Oh, are you really? Well, Jack Adamson's the guy's name. And there was a printer that worked all through Ohio. His name was Peter Kaufman. And he did book printing and did Proctor birth certificate. And Peter Kaufman was actually here at Economy for 2 years. And his occupation in Eileen English's genealogical book, his occupation is planer. And there's pieces in Arndt's book where he talks about the fact that he could be at peace while planing boards. So he ended up being quite a prolific printer.
Did he? I mean, I never paid attention to that, so
Yeah,
his name doesn't do anything.
Peter Kopp. And again, you know, this is the same way. There's a Harmonious building. I think it's the second one down. It was framed and it's been brick, which changed it. There's Harmonious. Now, this is actually part of the blacksmith shop, and its orientation, according to the walking tour book done by Dan Rybel, they say that the building was picked up and turned because if you notice, most of the roof lines go east-west.
Yeah.
And this one goes north-south. I haven't done a lot of research about it. Sarah and I have talked about it, but you know, it's the blacksmith shops and the wagon shed now is actually out here. So you know, it could have been part of it. And if we go over here, the gray building is a Harmonious dormitory building, but the yellow building is the first meeting house. Now, they didn't call their church a church, they called it a meeting house. So that is the first meeting house, and when they built the brick building, that became the firehouse. And I was actually on the Historic Architecture Review Board when those people did that building, and they really made it hard for us to, you know, they put siding on it. There's a beautiful doorway that was there, and they put some kind of metal grating or something there.
How can you be there
you know,
and watch that?
the only control that you have on the building from a HARP standpoint is what you can see from the street. And everything else, they can do whatever they want, and they can do whatever they want on the inside. So. And it's really hard because you're telling people what they can and can't do, and you're telling what kind of windows and what kind of shingles you use, but you know, it's an effort that brings a benefit to all property owners because you're upgrading and you know, you're developing, so to speak, the housing stock.
Yeah, they do that same thing in the town I'm in. They tell you which direction you can put your deck boards.
Do they?
Yeah. But it's not a bad thing. Just
Are you up for a walk to go to the visitor center, or do you want to take a shortcut?
I can walk anywhere.
Okay. Only because there's three Harmonious buildings on the corner here. One of them is awful hard to recognize.
And across the street, right on the right.
Yeah, that's
What's
the one. I think that's the most hard.
Well, on the right, on the field here,
You're talking this
was
brick wall.
the cider mill and the laundry.
Oh, okay.
That was a Harmonious building then, that brick one?
Not that.
No.
No, what's not here.
Yeah,
what's
that's
not
what
here?
she's
Oh,
saying.
okay.
This is where the laundry
Okay.
and the cider mill, cider press was. It's kind of interesting. There's a 1901 postcard, and the pictures are taken from the steeple of the church, the tower of the church. And it looks out through here. And very interesting, I think. You see all these houses with standing seam tin roofs. But you can also see the planing mill and the cider press and all those buildings. So we do have photographs, you know. And like I said, this Carnegie Mellon document, I have it in my package here, I'll show you when we're done. Does show, you know, the location where the buildings were. But all of this industrial complex happened happened after American Bridge came here. Now, this is a very interesting house because it never had the side addition on it, and it's got almost all of its original doors and windows. There's even a cupboard that was probably built in the 1840s in the back area here. It's like a pantry cupboard. I sold this house in late 90s. And a lady that was 88 years old bought it, completely remodeled it, and I think she lived till she was 98 years old. And it's just so interesting. She was very passionate about it, and
She was out here cutting the lawn with her scissors.
was she?
Are you kidding?
Oh, she's a character.
Yeah.
She was a character, and it still has the side entrance in that kitchen piece. They took a window out and made a door. This is the original door, the original entry. We're not sure when they added these little roofs over the doors, but you know they're harmonious construction. And this is one of the buildings that actually used, when they fired these bricks, on some of the surface, they called them shiners, and they actually put patterns into the brick. But this is what I was telling you about common bond. See, this is a 3 foot. Well, not quite 3. They turn brick. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you put the soldier course, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the soldier course. So that's the general construction. And there's that drip edge that I was telling you about. And they didn't have basements originally, but these things actually had troughs dug, and they led to the root cellar. So you had constant, like I said, there's a book by Pitzer that actually shows the layout of the under part of these buildings. And they took air in, and it stayed almost a constant 52 degrees temperature down in that root cellar. So that was the philosophy of that. Yes. And this building here is an original Harmony structure.
The white part of it.
The white part, yes. And again, this would be the last street, 16th Street. They had all German names, originally. This is the original frame Harmony structure. You can see the same type of overhang for the roof, yeah. And the doors in the original location where it should be. And then we're on the north end of town. So there's a tannery, pottery, which burned it. Yeah, that was all located on this side. And then really this was field and sawmill and the planing mill later on. They actually developed, it used to be called the Economy Planing Mill in Beaver Falls, and then it changed its name to Beaver Falls Planing Mill. Yeah. They made doors, window sash, they made fireplace mantles. I've actually got a catalog from like 1878 of the products that they made. So,
I might have some of those catalogs, because there's some unidentified, some stuff that made no sense to me in my collection of things.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, they were true entrepreneurs, and they came here as an agricultural society and grew crops, and then they got into the winemaking. They actually in 18 1911, they had a warehouse at Stone's Point, which is at the confluence of the Beaver and the Ohio River in Bridgewater. And they would ship products from Harmony to there and then put them on the packet boats and take them up and down the Ohio River. And there are no orange buildings on that side yonder. There's lots of conjecture about this building. But from everything I can find, it was the Cooper shop, and I can't find anything that supports it was moved. Do you find anything?
No,
Sarah?
but there's one map that shows that it's one story, so it's really
It might have
confusing.
had something, yeah.
Maybe it was added on to. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think I have 4 different walking tours of different vintages, and they all have some difference of opinion. If we kind of get in the middle over here, now there's an alley back here, and about halfway back the alley, that's where their pottery was. And then brick building right there, that's the bed and breakfast. We at one time, John Duss came here when he was 4, was raised and educated in the society, left to manage a school out west, and then actually was called back. And when he was called back, he was the schoolmaster of the new school, and he actually lived in that building right there. But prior to that, that building was a warehouse for the potter, Christoph Weber. So he would have worked right there and it would have made sense,
Yeah.
But again, that's another single-story brick structure that doesn't have the additional lean-to on it. So, that you saw 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. But if you look down here on this side, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 4 or 5 harmonious structures down.
16?
Yeah, everyone but this
Oh,
one.
everyone.
Yeah, except for this
Okay.
one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 harmonious structures. And then you can see, all the other. So that was the town plan, and like I said, the road actually come in from up there and hit on 14th Street. We'll take a walk down on this side. We'll close the loop. Are you parked down there? Or?
I got something to think. I parked different places. I'm in front of the church, or very near the church. Yeah, no, this has been very nice. I didn't expect to get the personal tour.
Well, if we're going to spend the time, we might as well have at least one satisfied customer.
But I don't know that I've ever, we didn't do all this the last time. I don't think whenever.
Well, actually, what I did last time, I did it in 2 loops because we had a lot of people that
you might have.
had different interests. Now, believe it or not, that first building is a Harmon's building, but at one time it was a store, so it's had a lot of alterations. And she's done a very nice
I
job.
was going to say, this is a great thing to have there.
One auction we sold 7 buildings in one day. We made a brochure up and had all the photographs and all the background information. Now this is where the pillars were.
Oh, and this one?
Right here and here, So this is called the second school. Now it's adaptive reuse, as apartments. Certainly be a great exhibit area, wouldn't it, Sarah? Or even a storage area, but I guess the exhibit would.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, that is not a Harmon's house on the corner.
Right. Those flowers, I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, could be.
That's where the cotton mill was up there, and the grist mill.
Yeah. Yeah, they were behind this house. In fact, we have photographs of 1898, and the cotton and grist mill still standing behind there in the streetscape. And then that's all still part of a Highview Avenue. Oral tradition has it that this is the house that Leno stayed in when he came here. Do you
I
agree
get
with that?
confused about that.
Yeah, I think that's it. David Miller, our curator of education, lives in it now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now, this is the first school, but this is also the
Blaine House.
Blaine House. And I remember that name because his son was a candidate for president in 1898.
Oh,
But this house, when they bought the original parcel of land, this house was down towards the Allegheny County line. They actually disassembled it and even shredded the plaster and then brought it here and reconstructed it. And then
that's a huge building.
it is, well, and it housed everybody, you know, while they were building the town. And as to the best of our knowledge, but it wasn't identified during the architectural review for the National Register. They didn't identify that house as a log structure.
Well, it looks like a harmless.
Oh yeah, and that's the problem, because the dimensions of it are the same, 32 by whatever. Just take a minute, we'll even walk down. And it had, you know, the first thing that they did with log structures was cover them with beaded siding to protect the logs. And that's why we can still look at it. So quite frankly, exposing the logs, you know, on a log structure is the worst thing that you can do, because then, you know, you have to annually treat that, you know, and then you got the exposure of the chinking to the moisture. So now this is a log structure also, but this structure was on another piece of property, and they disassembled it and they built it here. So, you know, that was the first building. This was the second building.
And that's got the little. You said that the boards get narrower as you. Take
Yeah, and here's the one.
Oh, that one definitely does.
There's the one I was talking about. Now, the same guy that owns this house also owned this house, restored it and sold it. But yeah, see, and that's definitely all original siding, and we can go look at the